Joining me on a wonderful Sunday morning. So just to give you guys an idea, this is really for the novices among you guys. I don't know how many of you attended Needle's talk yesterday on getting your first Python package. Ideally, I should have had this talk before Needle's talk, but both go hand in hand. Needle's talk, however, was more for people who actually do already have programming experience, like her in C, for example. This is also for the novices, for the people who really want to get started with Python and stay going and keep at it. So let's get started. So what I'm gonna talk about a little bit is like, why do you want to learn Python? I want to give you guys some resources on how you get started, and then we also want to discuss on how to get going. Just to let you guys know, I'd also like to make this interactive, so if you guys have any questions or any input. I know we had a discussion yesterday with the Pi ladies. A lot of us are trying to learn Python, and a lot of has got started, but it's hard to keep it going. My friend Margaret and I found this site yesterday. What was it called? Learn Programming in 10 Years. And that's sometimes the problem, that we get started, we take a class and we think, okay, yeah, we got something, but then it kind of peters away. And I want to give you guys a couple tips and tricks that work. So my name is Constance. I work at Rackspace as an information developer. I've had many years of experience in the software industry. I originally come from Microsoft. I used to document APIs in .NET, C and C# and C++. I got pretty good with programming, but never completely over the hump. And given the fact that it's C, in many ways that's more understandable. And I got into Python now for work reasons and for personal reasons, and I feel like I finally got the right language for me. And so I want to share that with you guys. With the .NET, and especially, and we talked with Nita yesterday, C, getting started with C, having to use a compiler and all that. It's very, very hard if you don't keep going at it. I agree. So there are basically three phases where everybody goes through. You want to discover Python. What is Python about? And that's why we're here at this conference. And then you figure out, how am I going to learn this? It depends what level you're at, if you have any programming experience or not. Once you've started learning, you need to get to the point of mastering Python. But yeah, so why Python? And I think probably you guys have learned about this at this conference. I mean, Python is cool. So there's many reasons. It's basically easy to learn when you stay at it. It's free. You can do super fun stuff. Raspberry Pi being one example. There's pretty good documentation. Some people say it's great. You can get by with writing fewer lines of code. And one thing that I've heard when talking to people yesterday, there's an awesome community at Python in every which way. And there's also a strong market demand. Market research shows more and more companies want people with Python skills. Many other reasons too. If you look at the curricula of some colleges now, they're switching from something like Java to Python. So Python is here to stay. That's also why we're here at this conference, right? But I mean, however many reasons, you have to ask yourself, why do you want to learn Python? And you guys feel free to share. Why? I mean, why did some of you guys, why are you interested in learning it?
I wanted to solve problems.
Yeah.
I did more research and the first thing I found that made it.
Yeah. And so why Python?
Why Python?
Yeah. Go ahead. There was somebody back. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Margaret, you were going to say?
I was just going to say what I really like about it as a writer, I'm also a writer, and you have to research a lot of source code, and Python is like so easy that like it's awesome. And white space matters, things that matter to me as a writer also matter in Python.
And Margaret and I are on the same team, and for us it's also, especially working at Rackspace, we realized a lot of the work is done in Python. We actually, Jesse Noller, who gave the keynote, he's part of our larger team, so we got a lot of support, and Rackspace is actually even offering courses, but the problem is they're not for the full beginners, and it's hard if you don't have a solid programming background. But yes, so this is the main reason. Why do you want to learn Python? There are a lot of, and this is not about showing you guys what you can get online, but just type in getting started with Python. There's a lot of stuff. There's, for example, the Hitchhiker's Guide to Python that gives you a roadmap. There's a beginner's guide to Python, and what's always good is going to the official Python documentation, and I'm actually gonna show you guys. It's always good to go to python.org to get started. If you don't know where to go, you can find a lot of information there, and you can also get into the community. So, in addition to websites, there's a bunch of books. Let's see, can I resume just 1 second here? Play from current slide. Okay, let's resume this. Lots of books you can get, and I looked at a couple of them. For example, there is the O'Reilly books. If you like O'Reilly, that's very, very solid. Personally, I bought a book called Python for Kids that I loved. I bought it for my son, but ended up reading through it. A lot of people love that book, and it really, really gets you going. It has some gaming examples. One really cool thing, and from talking to people yesterday, I gained that impression more and more. Raspberry Pi is a really cool and fun way to get in, and if you go into programming for Raspberry Pi and you order yourself the Raspberry Pi, maybe help out with some kids that have Raspberry jams. That's pretty good, and there's many, many more. One book that I found out works for a lot of people is this one, Learn Python the Hard Way. And I know, Margaret, you've been using it, and it's available for free. You can also purchase a copy, you can make a donation, and it's very, very cool. What's good about this book too is that it makes you actively type in all your code and have a real setup using a real editor. And I think you guys have probably all attended a bunch of talks on what is the best editor to use. I know Nido explained it yesterday. But this book actually makes you go through the steps, and that really, really helps. So very, very good resource. What I've also done is gone through online courses and researched them. And in the end, this has been working pretty well to get me going. So there's one, Coursera. How many of you guys have heard of Coursera? So most of you. Coursera is pretty cool, and you guys should check it out at www.coursera.org. It's a huge, huge library of free classes from global institutions. And right now, it's funny that they're kind of switching their focus on Python for beginners programming. And we'll go into that a little later. What I also heard from the Python Community Code Academy is pretty good, but you have to pay to sign up, so it's not free. Is it free?
Yeah.
Certain?
I believe the Python class is free.
Is it? So I saw actually that you have to pay, but maybe, I think maybe certain sections.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm 99% sure you can do the Python course.
Oh, good to know then. Yeah,
That's actually where I started.
is that where you started, and you like it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, and I might actually have seen like the advanced ones, but we can verify. There's the Google Python class, but you have to already be experienced. And also what I found out, there's O'Reilly, but O'Reilly definitely charges. The funniest thing, I used to work at Microsoft for many years. I found out that Microsoft, even through MSDN, now offers Python programming. They're switching, and they have a pretty good class. So I personally took the Coursera path. What's cool with Coursera, for the most part, it's free, but they also offer a signature track on certain classes. The most popular classes, so you pay $50 per class and you will earn a verified certificate if you turn in all your coursework. And strangely enough, for me, paying these $50 helped me stick with it. And I'm going to show you guys the Coursera website in a minute. I definitely recommend using it. The cool thing also is that they have a really, really good community. And they have meetups. For example, with the Pi Ladies, we had a Coursera meetup and study group. You can start your own one, so it's pretty good. So this is the one I took, Programming for Everybody. Have any of you guys heard about that? This is aimed at somebody who has really not much programming knowledge but wants to get started. In fact, the professor in the beginning said he also wants high school students. He's a pretty funny guy, this guy from University of Michigan. What I really liked about it, it had this book, Python for Informatics. And you can download, it goes along with the course, you can download it for free. And it's a great resource, you can put it on your Kindle. So yeah, it's very introductory, aimed at programming novices, and if you do the signature track, you have to do your weekly quizzes, weekly projects. He offers an editor where you type in everything, and I mean, it's very gratifying when you do your assignments and you type it in, but there's also a caveat, because it does not give you a real-life scenario. When you do real-life programming, you have to do your own setup and have your editor. At the same time, it's still very convenient. So yeah, here I'm showing off, this is the certificate, but it's cool once you got it. I mean, you can show it to your employer, it's not a diploma, but there's different signature tracks. The one, and I'm actually going to show you guys this online, Rice University offers a series of classes now, and I've started to work on this. I think they're very, very popular. It's 3 professors, very nerdy but very cool, and they have the whole fundamentals of computing 3 course offering that's accredited, and Python is the first one. And they have the weekly quizzes to a mini project. What they do have is something called code sculpture, which is kind of nifty. So yeah, let me show you. So this is how Coursera looks like in case you guys haven't seen it. Here's the fundamentals of computing. And I actually plan to go through that. And let's see, here's code sculpture. So I did the Hello Pi Texas. It's very simple, and yes, I've heard the argument, it simplifies things for you, but code sculpture now is actually known in the Python community, and people start using it, and it's a great tool to just at least test your code, get going. So it's a good tool to get started with. All right. So I definitely recommend using Coursera. Again, if you get stuck, there's a good community out there. When I did my Programming for Everybody class, I had a couple questions. What was really great, they had, the professor had a staff of TAs, and they answered basically in real time. And it's very, very gratifying. He had some, what I learned, and I thought that was pretty cool, he used email files, and we learned how to parse those and do some real life stuff, which I actually really, really liked. Extract values, which made me realize Python is cool. I can do a lot. This is what I can use for my job. So definitely. So you've done your Coursera, you've looked at your books, and there comes the point where you're basically stuck. So in the beginning you think, man, I'm so cool. I can write my first program. It runs. I can even parse something. And then all of a sudden you hit this plateau and you want to do more, and all of a sudden things become difficult. How am I going to go on? And well, and there are 2 phases where you don't feel that good about yourself until you kind of get over the hump. And I think that, to me personally, was the hardest part of learning Python, and that's where I never really got that far with .NET. I think I was always kind of stuck in stage 3 or 4. And I feel like with Python, it's actually getting better. So what do you do there? Just be aware you're going to encounter this. So what you do is you get support from the community, and that's, I think, one of the greatest things about Python. So you see these happy guys there. So there's several things you can do. And so we are, if you're a lady, you can go to the PyLadies. We have organizations all through the United States, and I think there is a global. Yeah. But you don't have to be female. There's also lots of, every town has different Python meetups. How many does Austin have? 5, yeah. Like regular meetups, they do study groups in Python, and it really actually helps. There's also different workshops. Some of them are hosted by the meetups. I've attended a couple of those now on how to learn Python. Lots of forums on Python. Lots of, if you go to Stack Overflow, for example, they, I think, are one of the best. If you have any kind of questions, then attend a conference. I think that's a good way too. And you get inspired. I think we've learned that. Margaret and I both attended it. I think we're getting inspired now. IRC is also something. I don't know how many of you guys use IRC. It's actually a good thing to get your questions out. And definitely look at python.org community. Yeah, and meetups, again, for me, the meetups are something really helpful. And especially if you do the Coursera route, I would recommend it. They can help you with your problems. We had, in addition to the PyLadies, we also have women who code. I did a project through work with my mentor, and I was completely stuck. I went to the Women Who Code meetup, and I left, and I had it unlocked, and it was really great. And we encourage each other, and there's also even ways to find a mentor. We've been talking a lot. I think it's very good to have a good mentor who can help you. And another thing, hack days. They're getting more and more popular, and I know like the PyLadies, they've hosted a hack day for beginners, and you can find them all over. So once you've gotten through the beginners part, once you've we've gotten over the hump, you need to think how I can actually master it. And one thing that I've learned, you can have as many courses, you can have as many mentors. It doesn't help as long as you don't have a good project. You need to come up with some kind of project, either work-related. In our case, we can actually pick work-related projects. We have support at work. But what I've also done, I have a colleague who is very happy and eager to teach us. We made a mentor study group, several people at work. And we come up with project. The project in the beginning was very simple. Hey, create a CSV file, like an address file, open it up through Python and save it to a SQLite database, and then parse it and perform certain functions. And at least if you have an idea, it keeps you going. Because if not, what are you going to do? You're going to lose it. So you have to keep practicing. For us also, for example, at Rackspace, there are a bunch of APIs. So I'm an API documentation person, and it gets very tedious to document everything in curl. So I've started taking a look at APIs out there. So we have Pyrax, for example, so I started playing around with that. Tons of APIs out there, tons of libraries that you guys can take a look at. So what I consider mastering is like when you really get deeper into it, like exception handling. One area I think where we never pay enough attention to is security. There are a lot of areas where we can learn more and dive into that. One good thing is with Python is to become a community contributor. Contribute to the Python source code, also contribute to the content, contribute to Stack Overflow. That's one way how you prove yourself, and also you become known and you get help. Then there are other things like learn about unit testing, regular expressions, and learn the Python package index, just to name a few. So here's one really cool project that I've been working on with a friend who has a startup, and my startup friend is really into image analytics, and there's a library called OpenCV that actually helps perform something like face recognition. So we started looking into that. We're analyzing images like the one, and we're trying to count how many faces are there and trying to find some kind of way to analyze it and put that information in a database. So this is something really cool for me and keeps me going. And the images have to be high resolution and tile based. And then you use the OpenCV package, everything is free. Yeah, so we came up with some usage scenarios that we're now using Python to analyze, automatically count the number of people in crowd images, analyze traffic, detect demographics such as gender or age. This is still at the very beginning, but it's kind of fun to actually do some initial tests, and that's currently what I'm working on. But there's also other cool things. So I came from the world of embedded computing because I worked with Windows Embedded, Windows Mobile, so I was very happy to find out that Python is really great in that area. So you can run Python on embedded devices, come up with a whole bunch of solutions. For example, use it for microcontrollers, run modified versions of Python. I just read something about this cool Arduino 3D printer. You could actually use Python. You can play around with Raspberry Pis, build some cool interfaces, use Python to collect data from a thermal sensor, all kinds of cool things in the end. And I think if you really get crafty with that and you're into hardware and all that, I think Python is really cool. I want to get myself, do any of you guys have a Raspberry Pi? Or yes, oh, see, that's my next step that I'm thinking, to get involved with that. And then, of course, Python offers so much to branch out once you're really good. You kind of need to find out where do I want to go with this? Do I want to do scientific Python? Do I want to do things like GIS or mapping? Do I want to do math? Work with databases? There's cool things you can, like I said, do the embedded. We had, what's their name? We have these people from the fitness company here. For example, you could use Python to get data from a Fitbit or a fitness device. And you can also use stuff like Kiwi. The Pi ladies had a talk about that, so tons of things. So basically, the sky's the limit, and that pretty much brings me to the end. So do you guys have any questions or anything to share? Or where do you want to go with Python? Yeah?
So I just wanted to comment, I don't have much professional experience in Python.
Yes.
Just kind of like office side, I've done a lot of professional work with
Yeah.
C, C++, Java.
Yes.
What I like about Python is that it takes about 1 day to get the concept working, as opposed to C++ and Java, where it takes a week, a couple of days, something like that, to just get the concept of what you need to do. And then in a week or 2 weeks, you can actually have the whole thing prototype with the working stuff. And that's, in my opinion, really big, and I'm really excited about embracing Python in various, ways. By the way, the slides will be available. That was one question I had.
I need to ask. I think I can make them available. Yes.
I think they're very interesting, and especially the part how to keep going.
Yes.
I think that's interesting for beginners. A few additional sources that I find interesting. One is Udacity.
Oh yes, yes.
Of course, and then YouTube is actually a really good source.
Yes.
You find tons and tons of talks. Probably these will end up on YouTube if I'm not mistaken. So that's all I have.
No, thanks very much for your input. Yes, I agree. There's a lot out there, and that's when I did C in the very beginning. I had a mentor at Microsoft from MIT, very smart lady. It took us weeks and weeks to write an app where we just opened a window, had a window handler.
It's frustrating.
Very frustrating. And even working with this OpenCV, it's so gratifying. Do you guys have, yes? Oh, yes.
Really good one. And some of the talks, especially some of the scientific computing talks on there, are just better than anything I've seen anywhere else.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it would,
I forget whether it's Pi Video or Pi Videos. I've got it bookmarked in my browser. I think it's Pi Video.
Pi Video. So I can make these, I have to talk to the organizers, but I mean, there's so much available online anyway. Okay, all right. Thank you guys.